the vast expanse of the Wild West, one name struck fear into the hearts of settlers and cowboys alike: the Apache. Renowned for their ferocity and cunning tactics, the Apache were a force to be reckoned with on the rugged frontier. The stories of settlers and pioneers who crossed into their territory bear witness to the Apache people's unwavering strength and legacy. They lived for centuries in the difficult landscapes of the southwest of the United States, maintaining their pride and resiliency as a nation of Native Americans. The Apache people were well known for their exceptional fighting prowess and their unwavering commitment to protecting their ancestral lands. They flourished in a challenging environment that required strength and adaptability. Within the overarching label of Apache, there were several distinct tribes, each with its own unique customs, languages, and territories. Among the most notable Apache tribes were the Chiricahua, Mescalero, Jicarilla, Western Apache, and Lipan. Each Apache tribe had its own distinct cultural practices, ranging from religious ceremonies to social customs. Despite their differences, they shared a common bond in their resistance against outside forces seeking to subjugate or displace them from their ancestral lands. The diversity among Apache tribes enriched the fabric of indigenous life in the Wild West. Renowned for their fierce warrior culture and unmatched guerrilla tactics, the Apache struck terror into the hearts of settlers, pioneers, and even other indigenous tribes. But what truly set them apart were their diabolical methods of dealing with traitors and enemies. One of the most diabolical aspects of the Apache's reputation lay in their treatment of traitors and enemies. To betray the Apache was to invite a fate worse than death. They were known to employ ruthless methods of punishment, often making examples of those who dared cross them. Some of the ruthless and gruesome punishments carried out by the Apaches were: 1. Exile. Exile among the Apache was a punishment reserved for individuals who had committed serious offenses against their tribe or band. It was a form of social expulsion that severed all ties between the individual and their community, often leaving them to fend for themselves in the wilderness. The process of exile was a significant and solemn event, marked by rituals and ceremonies that underscored the gravity of the offense and the severity of the punishment. Exile meant complete social isolation for the individual, as they were no longer welcome or accepted within their tribe or band. They would be shunned by their former friends, family, and fellow community members, cutting them off from the social support networks that were crucial for survival in Apache society. Exiles had to contend with harsh climates, scarce food and water sources, and the constant threat of predators. But hold on, it's just the beginning of the ruthless methods the Apaches used for punishing their enemies. 2. Scalping. Among the Apache tribes, perhaps one of the most infamous methods of punishment was the grisly practice of scalping. In the heat of battle, or as a form of retribution against traitors and enemies, Apache warriors would brutally remove the scalp from the heads of their victims, oftentimes while they were still alive. The act itself was a gruesome display of power and dominance, serving as a stark warning to anyone who dared to cross the Apache. The scalps taken as trophies not only symbolized victory but also instilled terror in the hearts of adversaries, spreading fear throughout the land. This ruthless practice exemplified the uncompromising nature of the Apache. The mere mention of Apache scalping was often enough to send shivers down the spines of those who knew of their reputation, solidifying their fearsome reputation as a force to be reckoned with. You would think that it couldn't get any more brutal than that, but wait for the next one. 3. Cutting out hearts. Among the Apache tribes, a particularly gruesome tactic employed against enemies was the ritualistic act of cutting out the heart. The ritual of cutting out the heart among the Apache was not just a grisly means of punishment, but also a ritualistic expression of their warrior culture's values. The process itself was carried out with chilling efficiency, often amidst the chaos of battle, as the warrior would skillfully wield his blade, cutting through flesh and sinew to reach the pulsating core of his fallen foe. This act, steeped in both brutality and symbolism, the sight of a warrior holding aloft the still pulsating heart of a defeated adversary struck terror into the hearts of those who dared oppose them. It wasn't merely an act of physical dominance, but also a spiritual assertion, as the heart was believed to embody the essence and courage of the fallen warrior. That is one method to instill fear in your opponent's hearts. Another, more graphic method was 4. Skinning, a method as feared as it was brutal, epitomized the Apache warrior's ferocity in dealing with traitors and enemies. In the heat of vengeance, or to make a chilling statement, they'd embark on this gruesome ritual. Imagine the horror of being stripped of one's skin, the very essence of identity and protection while still conscious. Every inch peeled away brought excruciating agony. It wasn't merely a physical punishment, it was psychological warfare, designed to shatter spirits and sow terror. The process, painstaking and deliberate, left no room for mercy, no respite from the relentless torment until death mercifully intervened. Next up, just when you thought things could not get any worse, we have another diabolical act done by the Apache people to flaunt their pride. 5. Mutilation. The macabre symphony of mutilation performed by the unrelenting hands of Apache warriors went beyond the simple brutality of skinning and scalping, delving surgically deep into the depths of horror. Faces, once windows to the soul, became grotesque masks of terror as ears and noses were ruthlessly excised, transforming identity into a grotesque parody of its former self. Each cut, each slice echoed with the chilling proclamation of dominance as the Apache warriors wove their tapestry of fear with the very fabric of their enemy's flesh. In the eyes of the Apache, these acts were not just vengeance, but grand declarations of supremacy, ensuring that their foes quivered in terror at the mere whisper of their name, for they knew that to cross the path of the Apache was to court a fate worse than death itself. Additionally, within Apache society, the regulation of marital and sexual behavior was a cornerstone of cultural norms. Adultery was considered a grave transgression, disrupting the fabric of trust and stability within the community. The Apache placed great importance on the sanctity of marriage and the family unit, viewing adultery as a direct assault on the integrity of these institutions. Adultery was met with swift and decisive action, aimed at restoring harmony and upholding the moral code upon which Apache society was built. They were born as warriors, molded by the harsh landscape into hardened fighters. From the moment they drew breath, they were taught the art of combat, their bodies tempered by the unforgiving trials of their environment. But it wasn't just their physical prowess that made them fearsome, it was their unyielding spirit and their indomitable will to conquer whatever obstacle stood in their path. Their enemies trembled at the mere mention of their name, for they knew that to face the Apache in battle was to invite death itself. When they rode into war, it was with a ferocity unmatched by any other. They struck like lightning, swift and deadly, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. Apaches had a different form of showing bravery, which included 6. Counting coups. Counting coups was a sacred and revered tradition among the Apache, serving as a symbol of bravery, honor, and prowess in battle. For the Apache warriors, the act of counting coups went beyond mere combat. It was a deeply spiritual endeavor that connected them to their ancestors and the natural world. To count coups means to touch or strike an enemy in battle, not necessarily with the intent to kill, but to demonstrate one's bravery and skill. This act could take various forms, from touching an enemy with a hand or a coup stick to stealing their weapons or horses. Each coup counted was not only a testament to the warrior's bravery, but also served as a source of pride and status within Apache society. Warriors would recount their coups with great ceremony, often embellishing their feats to inspire awe and admiration among their peers. The counting of coups was not restricted to battles with external enemies. It also occurred during intertribal conflicts and even in ceremonial contexts. Moreover, counting coups extended beyond individual acts of bravery. It encompassed communal efforts and alliances forged in the heat of battle. Warriors would often recount their coups alongside their fellow fighters, weaving a tapestry of shared triumphs and camaraderie. But what effects did all of these punishments have? The impacts of the brutal punishments and practices employed by the Apache, such as scalping, skinning, and mutilation, were multifaceted and far-reaching, influencing both the Apache society itself and its relations with other groups. The psychological impact of witnessing or participating in brutal punishments among the Apache was profound and multifaceted. Firstly, for the victims themselves, enduring such agonizing torment left lasting scars, not only on their bodies but also on their minds. The trauma of experiencing such extreme violence could lead to profound psychological distress, including symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Victims might also experience feelings of helplessness, humiliation, and existential dread as their very humanity is stripped away in acts of barbarity. Moreover, for witnesses to these punishments, whether they were members of Apache society or outsiders, the psychological toll was similarly significant. Witnessing such brutality could evoke feelings of horror, disgust, and fear, leaving indelible imprints on the psyche. These served to further stoke the flames of conflict between them and the white settlers and military forces encroaching upon their lands. As tensions escalated on the American frontier, these practices became symbols of resistance and defiance in the face of colonization and oppression. For the Apache, the arrival of European settlers brought about a drastic upheaval of their traditional way of life. Lands that had been theirs for generations were now being seized, and their autonomy was being eroded by the relentless march of Western expansion. In response, many Apache bands fought fiercely to defend their territories, employing guerrilla tactics and striking fear into the hearts of their enemies through acts of scalping and mutilation. These brutal practices, while rooted in cultural traditions and wartime strategies, were also fueled by a deep sense of anger and resentment towards the invaders who sought to subjugate them. The sight of Apache warriors exacting vengeance upon white settlers and soldiers became a rallying cry for resistance, inspiring others to join the fight against the encroachment of their lands and the destruction of their way of life. On the other side, the settlers and military forces viewed Apache practices with horror and disgust, further solidifying their perception of native peoples as savage and uncivilized. This perception, fueled by sensationalized accounts in the media and popular culture, justified the harsh measures taken by the U.S. government to subdue the Apache and other indigenous groups, including forced removals, military campaigns, and the establishment of reservations. The portrayal of Apache practices, such as scalping and mutilation, in the media and by settlers played a significant role in perpetuating negative stereotypes and perceptions of Native American peoples as savage and bloodthirsty. Throughout history, depictions of indigenous peoples, including the Apache, have often been filtered through the lens of colonialist narratives that sought to justify the subjugation and displacement of Native communities. In popular culture, including literature, art, and later in film and television, Apache practices of warfare were sensationalized and distorted to fit the prevailing colonialist narratives of the time. These portrayals often emphasized the most gruesome aspects of Apache culture, while neglecting the broader context of their social structures, spirituality, and resistance to colonization. For example, the practice of scalping, which was not unique to the Apache, but was associated with various indigenous groups across North America, was frequently depicted as a barbaric and indiscriminate act of violence, rather than as a complex cultural tradition with specific meanings and contexts.